Some moments in history do not just change the fate of one country, they permanently shift the balance of power across the world. The Iranian Revolution of 1979 was one of those moments. It transformed Iran from a close ally of the West into one of the fiercest opponents of Saudi Arabia and the United States, reshaped the Middle East, and pushed the Islamic world into a long and bitter ideological conflict. But this hostility did not appear overnight. Its roots were planted years earlier, through political repression, ideological rivalry, and decisions that quietly prepared the ground for revolution. In the previous episode, we saw how the atmosphere inside Iran was slowly changing. The Shah's government was enforcing rapid modernization and secular reforms. Outwardly, Iran looked progressive and stable, but beneath the surface, corruption was growing, political freedoms were shrinking, and the distance between the ruling elite and ordinary citizens was becoming impossible to ignore. A small circle around the monarchy enjoyed wealth and Western lifestyles, while millions of Iranians struggled with rising prices, unemployment, and constant pressure from state security forces. Protests were crushed brutally, opposition voices were silenced, and fear became part of everyday life. Mosques, universities, and underground circles quietly turned into centers of resistance. Anger was spreading, even when it was not yet visible on the streets. At the same time, different ideas about Iran's future were competing with each other. Some believed the solution was an Islamic system based on religious authority. Others supported leftist and Marxist ideologies. Many hoped for reform within the existing system. Within this environment, two highly influential Shia leaders stood out. Their disagreement was not about personal power, but the direction of the Shia world itself. One of them was Imam Musa Sadr. Imam Musa Sadr did not support Ayatollah Khomeini's vision of a full religious theocratic state. At the same time, he did not want open conflict. Both leaders were followed by millions from the same sect, and internal fighting could have destroyed the Shia community at a very sensitive moment. Because of this, there were people who wanted to reduce tensions between the two leaders. Imam Musa Sadr himself was interested in reconciliation. Among the few figures powerful enough to arrange such dialogue was Colonel Muammar Gaddafi of Libya. In 1978, a meeting was reportedly arranged in Libya between Imam Musa Sadr and Ayatollah Beheshti, a close associate of Khomeini. The goal was to improve relations and prevent division. Imam Musa Sadr arrived in Tripoli with his companions, but on the 31st of August 1978, he left to meet Colonel Gaddafi and never returned. From that moment onward, no one ever saw him. Some claimed he was killed. Others believed he was imprisoned or secretly removed. Gaddafi later said that Imam Musa Sadr had safely left Libya for Paris, and airport records seemed to support this claim. But Imam Musa Sadr never appeared anywhere in the world. Despite investigations by Lebanon, Iran, and even international intelligence agencies, no solid evidence was ever found. His disappearance shocked the Shia world and removed a key balancing figure. With Imam Musa Sadr gone, one leader remained unmatched in influence, Ayatollah Khomeini. Khomeini was not only gaining support among Shias, but also inspiring Sunni movements like the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt and Palestinian resistance groups. Palestinians believed that if Khomeini succeeded, Iran would become a powerful supporter against Israel. Soon, revolutionaries began visiting Khomeini in Najaf, Iraq. He openly spoke about overthrowing the Shah and establishing an Islamic system of governance. His speeches were recorded on audio cassettes, secretly smuggled into Iran, copied thousands of times, and distributed widely. Najaf slowly turned into a headquarters of revolution, attracting religious activists, leftists, communists, and anti-monarchy fighters. All of this was closely watched by Saddam Hussein, the real power behind Iraq's leadership. He deeply distrusted Shia political movements. On the 29th of August 1978, Saddam Hussein called Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi and suggested eliminating Khomeini permanently. Iran was already burning with protests, and Saddam expected agreement. But the Shah refused. He dismissed Khomeini as an old cleric who posed no serious threat. This decision later proved to be a historic miscalculation. Although spared, Khomeini realized that Iran was becoming unsafe for him. On the advice of his supporters, he left Iraq and moved to France, settling in a small town near Paris called Neauphle-le-Château. This move changed everything. In Najaf, Khomeini had access mainly to his followers. In France, he suddenly had access to the global media. Within just a few months, he gave over 100 interviews. He spoke in Persian while experienced translators conveyed his message to Western journalists. These translators carefully framed his words, emphasizing oppression, corruption, and injustice under the Shah while avoiding open discussion of a strict theocratic state. Western governments and intelligence agencies were not completely unaware of Khomeini's ideology, but their main concern was something else. They feared that if the Shah fell, Iran might end up under communist influence and move into the Soviet camp. The Cold War was at its peak, and the United States had already suffered defeats in places like Vietnam and Cuba. This is why Western focus remained more on leftist and Marxist revolutionaries, including figures like Ali Shariati. Then suddenly, Ali Shariati died in Britain. Officially, it was said to be a heart attack, but many Iranian revolutionaries believed he had been assassinated by the Shah's intelligence agency, Savak. This ignited further rage. Attacks intensified. Cinemas were targeted as symbols of Western culture. In one horrific incident at Cinema Rex, more than 400 people were burned alive after doors were locked and the building was fired up. Iran descended into chaos. Protests turned violent. Security forces responded with tanks and live fire. Thousands of Iranians were killed, arrested, or tortured by Iranians themselves. Shah Reza Pahlavi realized that power was slipping from his hands. Support from the United States and Saudi Arabia was fading. Still, he held on to a faint hope that Imam Musa Sadr might somehow return and calm the situation, but that never happened. Quietly, the Shah prepared his exit. He appointed Shapur Bakhtiar as prime minister and transferred authority. On the 16th of January 1979, the Shah and his wife left Iran and flew to Egypt. With his departure, over 2,500 years of Persian monarchy came to an end. Crowds that once chanted "Death to the Shah" now shouted "The Shah has fled." Statues were pulled down, royal symbols were destroyed, the old system was erased. At this point, many groups were leaderless. Secular nationalists had lost Imam Musa Sadr. Leftists had lost Ali Shariati. Only one man stood fully prepared, with organization, momentum, and mass support: Ayatollah Khomeini. When Khomeini prepared to return to Iran, three powerful enemies stood before him. Saudi Arabia had openly supported the Shah until the very end. Israel saw Khomeini as a threat because of his support for Palestinian resistance, and the United States viewed the collapse of the Shah as a major strategic loss, especially because of its role in overthrowing Iran's elected government back in 1953. Despite these tensions, diplomacy could still have reduced hostility. But in 1979, a series of events made that impossible. First, the siege of the Grand Mosque in Mecca shook the Islamic world and deeply alarmed Saudi Arabia. Soon after, Soviet forces invaded Afghanistan, triggering global outrage. And then, the seizure of the American embassy in Tehran, pushing Iran and the United States into open confrontation. These events ignited a new Cold War within the Muslim world, one whose consequences are still unfolding today. Without understanding these moments calmly and without emotion, it is impossible to fully understand today's conflicts in the Islamic world. This story is not just about Iran. It is about power, fear, ideology, and decisions that reshaped an entire region. And this journey is not over yet.